country at a discounted rate of $2.50 per square foot, where we only asked them to put in 5% deposit. We gave them a maximum, Mr. Speaker, of 10 years to pay, an interest rate of 4% per annum, and we asked them for a meager $190 a month. What is wrong with a program like that? I am beseeching the member for St. John's Wool West. I am begging you and imploring you to revisit this Land for Youth program. It is the best program that the Antigua Labour Party ever introduced into this country. And you agree with me? How can you, as Prime Minister, a man who says you care for the people from the ghetto, from the underprivileged, who grew up as an underprivileged young person, how can you, Mr. Member for St. John's Wool West, Mr. Prime Minister, agree to this and this program and disempower and disenfranchise those young people? And I'm saying that those young people don't want back the money. They want the land, because they'll take the money and they'll go and spend it on a motor car or spend it on entertainment. They want the land. They want the land. We had earmarked lands east and west of Pierce Village. You all take up the lands and give them back to state insurance. We took them away from state insurance to give to young people. And we agreed to give state insurance lands of equal value and equal acreage elsewhere. A playing field in Fidges Creek. I mentioned it to you all the last time I was in this Honourable House. That was earmarked, and I'm sorry the Honourable Attorney General is not here, because he has sat on the Fidges Creek Residents Association for many years. And we earmarked another cabinet decision for playing field for the young people in Fidges Creek. They have no sporting facilities. And what has the Ministry of Lands and Agriculture done? Take those same lands and cut it up and sell it to persons that are not even from Fidges Creek. They're not even from the area. I don't want to call some of the names, but very prominent, elitist business friends of the UPP, in being able to buy those very lands that were earmarked for a national park for the young people in Fidges Creek. I want you to address that, Mr. Member for St. John's Wool West. I asked since the last sitting of Parliament. I raised it in this House. It was unacceptable. It is not good enough to say that we have a national youth policy. Yes, it's great. And I commend the participants and the contributors for the hard work and the dedication. But let us start walking the walk. We can't be criticizing the young people for all the crime and the gun shooting and all the lawless behavior, and we are not showing that we are doing something for them. Sports, Mr. Prime Minister, sports is the greatest asset that we can give our young people as recreation, to build their minds and mature them. To build their minds and mature them. This Land for Youth, give them a stake in their country. Let them feel, Mr. Prime Minister, that they're able to have an advantage over ones that were able before them to have lands at peppercorn rates. What is wrong? What is wrong if we set aside 500 or 1,000 or 2,000 acres of land in this country and say this is for our young people? We're going to cut it up in 8,000 square feet lots. We're going to give them 10 years to pay 4% per annum. And I want to compliment you. You're a man of vision, Mr. Member for St. John City West. You were the minister at the time in charge of the Antigua Barbuda Development Bank. And you piloted this Land for Youth program. And I'm saying and I'm promising those young people out there, once we are elected into office, which we will be, that this Land for Youth, we will designate at least a very minimum of 2,000 acres of land. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Member for St. Peter.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I listened very keenly just a while ago, Madam Speaker, to the Honourable Member for St. John's Wool East. And while on one hand I'm obligated to commend the UPP government for lowering the CST on this schedule and basket of items, Madam Speaker, I think it is incumbent upon me to point out to the Honourable House and to the general public certain observations, Madam Speaker. And I'm going to hold the member for St. John's Wool East that he said that these items that he is lowering today from 5% to 2.5% will be also exempted under the ABST when the ABST comes into force. Madam Speaker, 2.5 years ago, under the Antigua Labour Party, a sheet of plywood, Madam Speaker, retailed for 60 EC dollars. Today, Madam Speaker, 2.5 years later, that same sheet of plywood retails for $115, Madam Speaker. That is a fact. You can go into the hardware stores and verify what I'm saying. A bag of cement, Madam Speaker, 2.5 years ago, used to retail for $12.50, Madam Speaker. Today, that same bag of cement retails for $19 and change, closer to 20 EC dollars, Madam Speaker. Ready-mix concrete, 2.5 years ago from Antigua Masonry Products or from Antigua Concrete Services, used to sell for $260, $270 maximum per cubic yard. Madam Speaker, that same ready-mix concrete today retails for $330 per cubic yard. Look at the increase, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I commend the government for lowering the CST, but I think it's a bit disingenuous for the government to argue, Madam Speaker, that a reduction of a few goods, approximately 100 items on this list, will translate generally to lower prices in the economy across the board, Madam Speaker. This is a farce. We consume approximately in excess of 1,000 goods, Madam Speaker. And if you lower the price and say 120 items, Madam Speaker, what happened to the other 880 or the other 900 items? Madam Speaker, the other point that I want to raise briefly, when the government lowered the CST from 10% to 5%, there was empirical evidence to show, and the member for St. John City West brought some of those items here into this honourable House to show the Honourable Minister of Finance that the savings were not necessarily being passed on by the supermarkets to the consumers. So I'm challenging the Ministry of Finance and the government to ensure that there are mechanisms, adequate mechanisms put in place so that the supermarkets are not the ones that are going to benefit from the reductions that you adumbrated here today, Mr. Minister. Remember, a lot of these goods on this schedule are not necessarily under price control, Madam Speaker. But the Ministry of Finance and the Ministry of Trade must ensure that adequate mechanisms are put in place so that the supermarkets do not benefit and the poor and vulnerable people out there do not receive the savings, Madam Speaker. Otherwise, in essence, what we'll be doing is benefiting the business class while the consumers will suffer. Madam Speaker, we know that we have an open economy. We import most of what we eat. We have an economy of approximately $1.2 billion in annual trade a year. So removing or lowering the CST on a few goods, Madam Speaker, does not necessarily translate to generally lowering the price in the economy of all your goods. Because, Madam Speaker, I know that the Minister, and I'm preempting him, the member for St. John's Wood East will come back and say, well, empirical evidence from the central banks and the OECD shows that we have a stable inflation rate of 2.5%. And it's fixed. And it's stable. That may be so, Madam Speaker. But in reality, when last have we updated the CPI? When last have we updated the true basket of goods, Madam Speaker? And if the basket of goods that we truly